Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show where we talk about all things automotive. Fixed ops, variable ops, back office, doesn't really matter. It has to do with running a car dealership. We bring on the experts to share with us what they're doing in the space so that we all become better at what we do. And I'm honored and thankful. Today I've got George Nenni with Generations Digital. This guy is a pioneer in the space, and we worked together, I think it was, about 7 years ago, George?
Yeah, something like that.
At a company called Dominion Dealer Solutions, and I met a lot of great people there, and George is right up there with those people. So, George, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Paul.
What's
Looking
that?
forward to I said, thank you for having me, Paul. Looking forward to the discussion. I've got about half of a voice. I screamed it out yesterday afternoon at the Bengals game, and the Bengals brought home a playoff win against the Raiders. First playoff win for Cincinnati in 31 years. So we were screaming and yelling.
Well, that's a lot to be screaming and yelling about. George, for the few folks that might not know who this George Nenni guy is, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to here?
Sure. I started in the car business in '93. Two of my older brothers did a startup in '89. They were just kind of getting off the ground. Most people are familiar with Dealer Specialties. So they started Dealer Specialties in '89 and were still working their day jobs. When I joined in '93, we franchised that model and covered the country from '94 to '99 with Dealer Specialty franchisees. They retired and sold the business in January of 2000. I stayed on with Dominion. In those days was Trader Publishing. It was the old magazine business, Auto Trader, Boat Trader, Cycle Trader, and they began to make a number of acquisitions. Dealer Specialties was the first in those acquisitions in the digital space, and I was fortunate enough to not only run Dealer Specialties but also run operations for digital and CRM until I left in late 2017 to start Generations Digital.
Awesome. We got a couple of folks on here. Andy Papenhagen says, good evening, everyone. And Russell Hill, another one of my fixed ops brothers. These guys are on the SDL show. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Service Drive Live on Sunday mornings.
I've heard of it. Okay. Yeah. Very nice.
Great bunch of guys. Eric is on. Good evening. Appreciate you, Paul. Eric, appreciate you, man. All right. So I wanted George on here because, 2022, we kind of, you're a hero to zero like that. And now the game starts all over again. And it's always good at the beginning of the year to sharpen our axe to get back in the game, because so much has changed within such a short period of time, but yet there are opportunities that we still miss on a daily basis. And there's a saying, you don't know what you don't know until you become exposed to it. And what I have found over many years out in the field as a road warrior is I would walk into stores and you would be shocked that the number of dealers that are not familiar with this tool called Google My Business. There were so many that didn't even know how to share it as far as to solicit reviews or some of the other things like adding content and things like that. And I wanted to bring George on because, this is such a great tool that everybody has at their disposal. I don't care what kind of business you're in. If you're on the internet, you have a Google My Business page, and shame on you if you're not making the most of it. And George is going to share with us tonight some of the best practices and this really neat tool that he's developed that will help you better understand Google My Business, Google as a whole, and some of the tools behind it. So I'm really excited about today's show, George.
It'll be great. It'll be great. But you're absolutely right. It's there are lots of, I think, free opportunities or low effort opportunities for dealers around the digital space, but none compared to the opportunities from Google My Business, now called Google Business Profile. They got rid of the word my, but it's all the same sort of opportunity.
A lot of people don't understand the acronyms or the terminology, and a lot of this stuff is pretty basic, no?
Oh yeah, very, very basic, and that's that's the nicest part about it is it's very light lifting. You're essentially kind of going through the profile and filling in any information that's not filled in. But I felt that dealers needed the right playbook, and so we released our first book last year on the topic, and we kept it updated. We just updated a new version of it. But if you've got the right playbook and you know the steps to take, it's relatively straightforward. And today, a lot of dealers pay for SEO. A lot of dealers are concerned with SEO, and they know it's important. Today, local SEO is Google My Business, right? It's Google Business Profiles. And so not only does it sort of demystify or simplify SEO efforts from the dealership, but it's incredibly impactful. And if the dealers take the right moves, they can improve their ranking and hopefully their competitors aren't paying attention and increase their share of non-branded category search. And that's really the most important. If you take nothing else from today's show, it's this. Winning on Google My Business is not about winning on your name. Google takes care of that. If you go and Google search any dealership's name or any business name across the US, their one single or maybe multiple Google Business Profiles will show up. But that's not really what winning is about. Again, since Google takes care of that, winning is about winning on non-branded category search. So used car dealer near me, brake repair near me, body shop near me, those sort of things.
And what's interesting is that because people aren't optimizing those, oftentimes, somebody will do a search from the dealer's own parking lot and be directed to another repair shop down the road, just by virtue of them not having put in all of the information that they could put in that would attract that local customer. Because, let's face it, if somebody's going to look up something today for a business, you're going to go on Google.
That's true. And anytime Google thinks you're looking for a business, or anytime Google thinks you're looking for a service or a product, and especially if you include like near me or put a geography or a zip code or San Diego, California, Google is going to return either a single or multiple Google profiles.
Now, what type of tweaks could a dealer or should somebody be doing to their profile page to attract more of the local customers?
Sure. So using the example that you had there before, so someone's standing on a dealership's lot and saying, brake repair near me, or searching for fixed ops, if the dealership's not appearing, the first sort of strategic decision the dealership needs to make is that they can't live with one single Google Business Profile. If a dealership, and every new car dealer offers service as well, some offer collision and body shop, dealers must have separate Google profiles for sales versus fixed ops versus collision and body shop, because if they don't, there's no way you can optimize a single listing for all those different categories. And if folks don't believe what I'm saying, it's very easy to test, right? If you go out and search for fixed ops terms in any major metro, auto repair near me, brake repair near me, collision center near me, you will find some local mom and pop shops, you'll find some big box providers, and then you'll find the service Google Business Profile for franchise dealers. You will not find new car sales side of franchise dealers. It's that competitive today. And the reason is because when you look at other big box retailers, they've already figured it out. If you look at Kroger or Walmart or Home Depot, they have a dozen or more Google Business Profiles. Kroger has a Google Business Profile for their ATM machine, right? So they know that they can optimize and win in the local market. And so if you have Walmart in your market, go to Google and search for bakery near me, search for pharmacy near me, search for deli near me, and who are you going to see? You'll see your local providers, and you'll see Walmart, and you'll see Kroger, right? Because they've optimized those listings, and now they win on non-branded category search across many categories, right? Because they're in a lot of different businesses.
I would say from my standpoint, from what I see in the East, very few dealerships have more than one Google profile. I don't know if there are stats. Do you have any kind of stats as to what percentage of dealerships across the country have two or three, depending on their offerings?
Yeah, I would say, when we take on new customers, it is now become rare that they don't have multiple. So I think it's more and more for a franchise dealer, it's more rare, especially because you've got OEM efforts going on as well, right? So Ford Direct kicked off a program early this year or early last year, and help the dealers build fixed operations Google Business profiles for their dealerships. If the dealership already had it handled, that's fine. But if they didn't, Ford actually worked with Reputation.com and kind of batch uploaded, service pages for those dealers. And so I'd say for Ford dealers, they probably all have at least service and sales listings.
And that started last year.
Yes, I think they announced it in February and they started rolling it out in March or April.
Okay.
If you're a Ford dealer, I would go in and tweak those. I mean, they did a basic setup on those, but there are in a Google Business profile, one of the most important signals is something called categories, and categories are these broad sort of groupings for businesses, and dealerships should make sure that they fill out the proper categories for their dealership. So if it's a Ford dealer on the sales side, the first primary category should be Ford dealer. And then the next category should be used car dealer, and then maybe car dealer, maybe car leasing service, right? You have a primary category, and then you're allowed to have 9 secondary categories. And dealers should make sure they don't overlap those, right? So the sales category should share 0 categories with the fixed ops Google Business listings. But for fixed ops, for your service department, there are 33 available with Google, 33 fixed ops automotive categories, right? So dealers have to pick and choose. You can't even use all 33 if you're only able to use 10, right? And so dealers that really pay attention, and then they test and see where they're ranking, and then Google allows you to look at the search queries so you can actually see what people are searching for when they find your listing. And by looking at those things and kind of tuning it, you can really dial in and make sure you're ranking as high as you can with your review star rating. If you have a bad review star rating, all the categories in the world won't help you. So that is a base level of performance.
So Ford, as an OEM, implement this program. You said it rolled out April of last year. Are there other OEMs that have jumped on the bandwagon as well?
Not recently. So years ago, GM did, and many years ago, Toyota did. We see the remnants of those programs sometimes, but not recently.
So it's a great opportunity for them to essentially increase their visibility for free.
Yes, that's correct.
We've got a couple of comments here I don't want to miss out on. Mark Williamson, very great supporter of the show, says hello everyone. And AJ Fulham checking in, looking forward to the conversation with George. Very respected in the automotive industry, as well-versed leader and educator. I will say that. LinkedIn user says, ready to geek out on SEO. LinkedIn user, for those that don't know, is Mr. Lamont. For some reason, his thing always comes through as LinkedIn user. I haven't figured out why. And after the show, when I go on LinkedIn, it's got his name. Don't know why. Very weird. Timothy Wilson, evening all, says hey to Eric, and Russell says most are not paying attention. You can't see the forest from the trees if you're always busy, and right now we're busy because we're shorthanded and we're selling more than we're able to get our hands on. It's very easy to miss these opportunities, but at times like these are when it's critically important to have somebody charged with making sure all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed, because there's going to come a time when we go back to the time before COVID, otherwise known as the time after COVID, where we'll be dealing with some of the same problems that we've dealt with before that right now we've been spared for the last couple of years. And Timothy Wilson says, imagine that, your internet guy asleep at the wheel. Test. Greg Scott says, good evening. And Rachel Swanson, Google rewards businesses that provide the best shopper experience. Can't wait to get your new book, George. Hey, George, do us all a favor. And after the show, put in the comment section links to your books.
I will do it. I got a hot copy right here. So love to share that.
I'll have to share my address with you. I would be honored to get a signed autographed copy, just saying. No,
Sure.
no pressure, George, no pressure. Russell Hill
Glad to.
says someone just has to pay attention to what they're doing. Yeah, it just needs focus. That's all it is. And Lowell Wilson, here we go. Michael Barrich, another one of my fixed brothers. The attention is in the details. And Russell says critically is the right word. All right. So let's talk about Google Analytics. Here's a wonderful tool that I've had the pleasure of sitting in on some dealer meetings where we actually had Google teach classes on this, and it was very informative for most of the people. And we're talking about successful dealer groups here, where we're just kind of learning some of that information today that's been available. Talk to us a little bit about Google Analytics.
Yeah, I mean, Google Analytics is a free analytics tool that's installed on, I would say, every dealership in the U.S. and Canada, and probably more than that. It's I think Google Analytics appears daunting or intimidating to people sometimes, and it's just one of those things that you just got to dive right in on. You can't take down the website by making a mistake in Google Analytics. It's just a visualization and reporting tool, and so I think personnel at the dealership or managers at the store who want to learn Google Analytics and want to get comfortable with it have to commit to using the tool a few times a week for a month or two, and just repetition, right? So I like to use the example of, if you move to a new neighborhood and you're driving for the first day, and your house happens to be tucked into these massive neighborhoods, you almost have to use your GPS to get home the first day, right? You don't really know the neighborhood real well. After a couple of weeks, do you need that at all? No, you know exactly. You don't even think about it, right? And so it's the same way with a piece of software. If you commit to getting that software on a regular basis, a few weeks pass and you'll be like, I know more than I really give myself credit for. And then after a while, it's that neighborhood that that you've been to a number of times. And once you get in, Google has a lot of really complicated names for things, but they're not really complicated to use. And so, we have a training course on generationsdigitalu.com, and you can it's 29 lessons and got 3 exams, and it will certify you from Generations Digital for Google Analytics for Automotive. But it's just a great tool to use to I think hold your vendors, whether they be internal vendors or external vendors and agencies, accountable.
It's funny you mentioned the after a few weeks you don't need the GPS anymore. Well, there are some of us out there that are directionally challenged, we'll say. And I remember when I first moved to Niantic, my wife used to laugh. We're driving home and she would start laughing. And this is weeks after living here. And I would look at her and say, "What are you laughing at?" And she says, "You drove by the complex again."
That's great.
So it's not always second nature for everyone. And the great thing about Google Analytics is that you can't break it, right? You can't mess it up. It's you can explore it. It's fairly intuitive, although a course like yours, I'm thinking about taking your course because there's so much more to it than even I know or use, that you do this every day. So for you, it becomes second nature. And when you do something all the time, you see it as second nature, and you take for granted that there are others out there that just don't know all of the nuances. And as with anything, the better you know it, the better you can leverage that tool, and anything that could be measured can be affected and changed for the better. So the course is, how many did you say, 29 weeks?
29 lessons. So each lesson is maybe 5 to 8 minutes, and then every kind of block there's an exam after. So there's 3 exams to get past. At the end of each 7 or 8 lessons, and at the end there's the final exam. And it's I think most people that have gotten through at least half of it go ahead and finish it. There's a lot of folks that have just kind of skimmed through and knew analytics, but just kind of just use some of the more advanced modules. But it's essentially everything that we use every day with dealerships and analytics. So something to definitely try. Maybe we can give your listeners or people on here a coupon code or something to make it more attractive or something. Our big evidence is that people use it, people find value in the coursework. The other
Yeah,
part
no,
about
that'd
analytics,
be great.
the other part for dealers to make sure, again, one of the important takeaways from the session, make sure you know who your admin of Google Analytics is, right? Make sure it's not owned by the agency or controlled by the agency. We just had a new customer a couple weeks ago come on, and we had to start their analytics over. Their agency had started the analytics 5 years prior and considered it theirs and would not share it. And so for a dealership, having to start over on your analytics may sound simple, but I think it's a huge loss of an asset. Imagine not running your dealership without the last year of your profit and loss statements, right? It'd be so hard to compare performance this year to last year. Well, the same way with analytics, right? Wouldn't it be great to know if your organic search has been growing the last 5 years? Wouldn't it be great to know if your new paid social vendor is better than the paid social vendor you used 2 years ago? So that historical analytics can help you really dial in benchmarks over time for your dealership that has huge value.
Were there a lot of agencies that kind of set this up for dealers and are keeping those assets as their own?
No, it's definitely the minority. It's the oddball here and there. No, most agencies are very above board and would say absolutely they understand that it doesn't do them any good to hold it hostage, and why not leave on friendly terms.
Right.
Dealers bounce around agencies probably every 18 months or so. And so, I think you always want to leave the door open to maybe get back into an opportunity.
Yeah, I always found that strange. There was, in traveling up north, I found there were a number of dealerships that didn't even own their own domain. They were, it was being managed by another agency that managed a whole portfolio of web domains, which is again another thing I thought was kind of crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, not only analytics, the whole Google family of so if it's Search Console or if it's Google My Business or Google Analytics, Facebook logins, of course, any of those online properties, you make sure that either a owner, dealer owner or senior leadership, has those logins.
Let's see. Michael Barrett says, "I'd love to know more about certifications." Michael, we're going to put a link in the thread here of the show, so you'll be able to connect with George. And anybody that's not connected with George, by all means, definitely reach out to him and connect. And Steve Apicella says, "Google is clearly the dominant browser at 67%. Does their analytics and strategy only impact a Google browser end user? Is there a pathway to capture the other 33% that are using different browsers like Apple Safari, or is that too difficult?" What do you say about that?
So that's not the case. So Google Analytics measures anybody browsing on the website. It's browser independent. So Google Analytics simply looks at the website and says, Safari, Chrome, Firefox, any browsers, are measured. So there's no limitation there.
So I think what George is, so what Steve is talking about then is using Google as a search tool, but it doesn't matter what they use to get to the Google Places page, because
yeah. So maybe the question could also be, I guess, that if not everyone uses Google as a search engine, then yes, I mean, Google Business Profiles, Google My Business only pulls up when people are searching in Google. Bing also has Bing Places, right? So if people are using Bing search engine, they can see the Bing Places. And I think Bing's kind of laid down on this topic. Bing has a setting in the Bing Places where it'll just synchronize with Google, right? So you can just have your Bing kind of set up to mirror Google. The one that has been paying attention to it is Apple. So Apple has been making a number of different improvements in Apple Maps, and that's one to definitely pay attention to. And in the book, we recently just rewrote the entire Apple Maps section in the appendix, so it'll walk you through how to set up and claim your Apple Maps listing.
That's good information to know. You've got to keep an eye on all of them, but at the very least, the top one or the second up and coming.
Sure. I mean, think about how many Apple CarPlays are installed, right? A lot. Think about how many people don't take away. Like when I get an iPhone, the first thing I do is is load Google Maps on because I like Google Maps better than Apple Maps. But my
Yeah.
kids don't. They love Apple Maps, and a lot of people do. And so if someone's searching on Apple Maps, your profile is going to appear. You want to make sure that information's accurate. Apple is also beginning to build out their own review system. So they're starting to collect reviews, which my hopeful side says that that means one day they'll part ways with Yelp, and I think that'd be a good thing for automotive. Yelp has never been very friendly to dealers, and would love to have a review system that was maybe a little bit more fair.
Now I have Apple Play in one of our Subarus, and I have to say it's been somewhat frustrating. I've since named it Apple No Play, and my buddy who's the service manager at my Subaru dealership has learned when to and when not to take my phone calls, because at those frustrating moments, when the thing just kicks out when I need it most, that's not the time to take my call. But as of yesterday, I downloaded the latest iOS update, and according to that update, it addresses some glitches in the Apple Play specifically. So I'm hoping that Apple No Play turns into Apple Play again for me at those rare instances when I need it most and it doesn't work.
Yeah, no good.
Got a couple of comments here. AJ Fulham, GA is most helpful when you have consistent input, customer events, UTM tags, etc., which can help illustrate areas of success or the lack thereof to help drive business decisions. The tags are key because that's where you know who's coming from where. And how difficult are those to set up?
Those are relatively easy. Yeah. So UTM tagging is all you're really doing is adding something to the URL, right? So if you have an email campaign and you're going to land them on your service page, when you UTM tag that service page website address, you're simply adding like a suffix or an append onto that URL. And when someone clicks on that, now we have transparency into that visit, and we can measure that campaign success. And so when you look at analytics, there's really two big broad goals when you have Google Analytics on a website or on a dealer website. First, you set up the goals, right? You make sure that you can track, if you want to track VDPs, vehicle detail pages, click to call, chat, lead forms, all those common kind of conversions, Roadster tool engagements, AutoFi leads, your digital retailing tool usage. You get all those goals set up, and then you make sure that all your traffic is properly tagged. Make sure that all the traffic coming in has all the right UTM tagging, and then you sit back and just watch the traffic flow through. You reward traffic that converts on those goals, and you reward traffic that shows good shopping behavior. You reward traffic that's in your local market, and then you penalize traffic that's not, right? So traffic that comes to my website, looks and throws up and leaves, I want less of those clicks, right? So Google Analytics helps you measure, where am I getting my high quality traffic? Where am I getting my low quality traffic? And how do I just, dial that in and improve my results? And, it works. It's relatively easy. UTM tagging, by the way, if you think it's tricky, just go to generationsdigital.com and click on resources. The resources tab has a bunch of free downloads, including a UTM tagging guide that we just updated. You can give it to your agency, and they can tag up all your campaigns if they need that.
That's great stuff to know. That's a great resource.
Thank you.
Rachel Swanson, George Nenni, can you share your GA insights with dealers that have cars for sale set up? I see a lot of dealers not taking advantage of this feature.
Yes, good question, Rachel. She's all over it as usual. Yes, cars for sale. It's confusing because there's two cars for sales in automotive. There's the old carsforsale.com, which sells websites and listings to independent dealers for $99 a month. And then there's Google also used the name Cars for Sale for the inventory function that's on their Google Business profile or their Google My Business listing. So that's available on desktop or mobile. If you're curious if your dealership has it, find your dealership, find your dealership's Google Business profile and look at it on your laptop or smartphone and see if it has an inventory section. It will list different make models. It'll show your inventory sort of in a carousel, and you can click on that on those listings. So if you see that and you're not sure who is your provider, there's a couple techniques you can use. The first is you can just click on one of the vehicles and deep link to your website, and then go up in the URL, go up in the website address. And this may sound kind of tricky, but if you look in the website address and you look all the way to the right, the very last characters, it will say campaign equals, and it will show your name. It'll show Edmunds, or it will show Dealer Teamwork. It will show someone who's doing that for you. There's also another way. If you go to Google and you find your Google listing, and if you're one of the admins for Google, it will give you an opportunity to edit it there, right there in the search engine. And when you click that edit button, it'll have a Cars for Sale tab, and it will show you who your provider is. You can have a primary provider, and you can have a number of secondary providers. In case one of the if one of the primary providers' feed fails, you can have a backup inventory feed, that sort of thing.
So you have a failover set up, so your inventory is always visible.
Correct.
And that would just take over in the event that the first one failed?
Correct.
You're not going to have two feed in at the same time.
Correct. Yep. And you want to inspect those listings and make sure there should be a website link, a phone number, and a share button. Sometimes we'll go in and we'll see that the website link's not working. I don't know if that's a vendor-specific challenge, but we'll get with the vendor and make sure that it's deep linking to the dealer website.
Okay.
Dealers shouldn't get too optimistic about the number of clicks they'll get. I think an average dealer might get maybe 5 or 10 clicks a month from those listings, but they definitely get folks that are shopping those listings, and it's a great presentation.
Now, even though they get few clicks, and that one particular click may not be the one that converts, but in the grand scheme of things, you want to be everywhere, because the more times they see you, I don't know what the exact number is lately, but there's a certain number of places that people are going to look before they decide to make a purchase. And you want to make sure that the more doors that people open, they see you, because at some point in time, they're going to pull the lever to go. And you can't always connect the dots as to how many different places they've seen you that causes them to take action.
Yep, correct. And also, those same inventory feeds for Cars for Sale, it's the same structure that's feeding the new VLAs, the vehicle listing ads, that Google has rolled out. So Google is slowly rolling out a new search product for automotive, where and I'll try to give you one that may work. If you search in Google for 2012 Chevy Silverado, Columbus, Ohio, you'll see these vehicle listing ads at the top of the search engine. In Columbus, I think Vroom and Carvana are buying a lot of those listings, but that's definitely something to talk to your agency about. They probably are not approved yet to do it because it's a slow rollout, but I think those are going to change the dynamics for third-party classifieds in a pretty big way, and that's why they're buying those ads also. So the dealers will be competing with the third parties to buy those VLA ads also. Now, I don't mean to jump around a little bit on that, but that's a new product that is definitely going to be impactful.
Yeah, and a lot of OEMs are getting more involved in trying to compete with Carvana and CarMax by having their own online offerings like that. So
yep.
It's interesting to watch the space evolve over time.
Yep. And one more thing around Google Analytics, just to add, I would never want dealers to feel like, hey, it sounds like I need to learn analytics, or I'm not going to be able to hold my agency accountable. I either need to learn this program, or I'm not going to be able to have my own dashboard. I won't be able to, the reality is, you can still ask those hard questions, right? I mean, if I don't have the ability to learn analytics, I don't have a dedicated person, and I'm the GM, and I'm not going to do it myself, you can still know those hard questions, right? Ask your paid agency for a list of paid keywords that they bought for you in the last 100 days, and have them download them into a spreadsheet, right? And you want to know the keyword, you want to know the search query, what the person was searching for, you want to know your cost per click, you want to know session duration, pages per session, how many VDPs, how many goals, right? Just make them give you the reporting out of their analytics, right, for the things that are important. And then once you get that, you can do some incredible searches, right, or sorts of that. You could immediately know your most expensive. You just sort that spreadsheet by cost per click, find out your most expensive cost per click. You could have them break that out by branded versus non-branded, which is a really important conversation. Know your cost per click for branded versus non-branded, right? So just because I don't know analytics doesn't mean I can't ask the agency to use their analytics and give me that data in Excel where I can massage it.
You don't have to know the whole thing. You just have to have a basic understanding of it and know what questions to ask. And George has supplied you with the questions to ask. I'm a firm believer that you don't necessarily have to know it. You just need to know somebody that does.
Sure.
Because the bottom line is to be able to get access to that information, which you can then make actionable to make the right decisions for your store. We got a couple more comments here. Albert Thompson says, can you share more insights on how GA4 will tell the overall customer story versus current UA version? It's a different way of measuring the story, but the main things we value today in GA will shift. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, GA4 is definitely the future. I mean, and GA4 is it is much different in terms of the way that it's going to measure events versus goals, and some of the way it's laid out is just a different approach. It deals with cross devices more gracefully than universal analytics. But if you're a regular user of analytics and you've gotten in and looked at GA4 even recently, it's just got a long way to go. There's just so many pieces that are still missing. They've got to do development, I think, faster, or it's going to be another 2 years. I mean, it's the rate of new development for GA4 just in my mind still just feels like it's lagging behind. So I don't think Universal or the old analytics will go away anytime soon. It's smart for dealers to set up GA4 tracking and be able to collect that data, but it won't give you the answers that Universal gives you today.
George, did I hear you say potentially 2 years before that's built out?
I mean, I've been following it for a year and a half. I mean, the new developments that have happened in the last 12 months, I just don't think are at pace to be able to all the different things that it's missing. I mean, it's just a really thin piece, in my opinion, today. But plenty of people were tracking it. Plenty of people were paying attention to it and setting up their dealership for it, but not using it to measure today.
Because in our business, 2 years is a lifetime, especially, automotive seems to be at the forefront of technology. We've fast forwarded so many years within just the last 2 years. So I find it hard to even conceptualize something taking another 2 years. Wow. Corey Smith says, interesting. I'd love to know more. What is the average dealer ROI?
I don't know if I know that question. ROI meaning
return on investment.
Cost per lead? Yeah, like cost per lead or cost per shopper, or
yeah,
there's lots of different benchmarks.
If you could kind of explain specifically which ROI you're talking about, I'm sure George can address that. AJ Fulham says, Google made a recent update to their mobile business search engine results page, which includes additional platform reviews such as Facebook. Interesting that they're highlighting additional review sites on their platform. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and Google kind of flip-flopped around doing that over the last several years. I would speculate it's probably a DOJ move, maybe. They want to appear not to play favorites too much, and so syndicating other folks' reviews. Those reviews change a lot. If you look at a Google Business Profile, and we snapshot and archive lots and lots of those for dealers, so we see them over time. Those reviews change monthly and weekly, and almost every time you're up there looking at them.
Steve Apicella, thanks. I was trying to prompt the topic that a Google strategy, although critically important, isn't the only strategy for a business in 2022. Many Apple users stay native to Apple solutions. It sounds as though Apple Maps has made some great improvements, because I know a couple of years back, I wasn't really too satisfied with it. Their mapping software seemed to leave a lot to be desired. It would take me to places not necessarily where that place was, but it sounds like they've made a lot more improvements than that.
Yeah, it's my kids and their friends like it because it's more graphical. It's more 3D. And they tell me, I'm a big Waze user, which is of course owned by Google. They tell me that they don't have issues and it gets them to the right places. But the reality is it's the native on Apple devices, which is a huge part of the market, and most people don't change that mapping app, and so they're seeing your dealer listings on there probably pretty regularly.
And with more and more integrations with OEMs, it's going to become more prevalent than it already is.
You're right.
All right, Albert Thompson, George, we offer cars for sale, and to promote this show, if retailers mention Generations Digital and Paul Meier's show tonight, we will give the retailer a free, that's all caps free, for 6 months. Reach out to Rachel Swanson and she can help you. This is a great show. Thank you, Albert. Albert and I are going to be doing some things together. We've already started, and as the song goes, we've only just begun. Corey Smith says cost per lead. That's the ROI.
Okay. Yeah, so cost per lead and what we consider a lead, what we consider a true conversion, are lead forms, click to call, trade lead, digital retail lead, chat, text. We don't count directions requests. So anytime that the dealership is in contact with a customer, may or may not know their name, that is a lead in our book. And so our cost per lead varies by different channels, right? So let's first talk about non-website. How about third-party classifieds, right? We're classified. Auto Trader, Cars.com, Car Gurus sends shoppers to your site or sends leads to the dealership, either phone calls, messages, or lead forms into the CRM. Our goal there is less than $50. And then VDPs, vehicle detail pages on third parties, less than 50 cents. Okay, so now we switch to dealer websites and we talk about paid search. Our goal for paid search, cost per click, less than $8 cost per click, which is a really big number. I think a lot of dealers are probably less than $5 cost per click. And then cost per lead for paid search is $80, which is a really big number. That's on website, right? So when you add phone calls in from those ads, that benchmark goes down to $30. So $30 all in, paid search with phone calls included. Paid Facebook, cost per VDP less than 50 cents or 40 cents, and cost per lead less than $40. So you hear all those different numbers, and those are kind of the basic numbers. We've got some more, and I didn't mean to rattle through those too quickly, but they can always replay the show. That is why paid search is such a bad choice for used cars, right? When you run used car campaigns for paid search, you'll get nowhere near those third-party classifieds benchmarks. We see paid search on used, typical VDP of $6 or $8 or more, and then cost per lead, very difficult to get less than $80. It's too hard to match the intent of the searcher with the content that you have, and so much better to spend those dollars with either third parties or with Facebook ads.
And some of those third parties, I mean, there's dealers spending $8-10 grand easily.
Combined?
Yeah.
Yep. I mean, typically, yeah, that's probably pretty easy to do. Dealers don't necessarily have to be with all third parties, but I'm usually skeptical of a strategy of being on none. I do think that's if you go in any major metro in the country and you search for any used make model, the third parties just dominate page one. And so when dealers say they're firing all the third parties and replacing it with paid search, we get super concerned because we know that they'll spend a ton of money in the process and they won't get those shoppers.
That's a bad recipe.
Yes.
And I think you said dealers typically stay with their agencies about 18 months. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, that's actually a study we did back in the day with Dominion. I think kind of a loose ad hoc study. We looked at a number of dealers and how long they had been with various vendors, either with us or with other companies. And now being in the business, that's 2 years it would be a long engagement. Now sometimes those get broken off because of OEM deals. A Honda dealer will just love this agency who's run their Facebook campaigns, just blowing it out of the water. But the OEM comes in and say, hey, we're not supporting these vendors. You got to switch to these vendors, and they switch.
Would you say that a lot of dealers changed their agencies too rapidly, expecting too greater results?
My feeling on one of the primary reasons that dealers switch agencies, on their own decisions, is that they, for one, maybe aren't using Google Analytics. They're not measuring. They don't have their own dashboard. They're really trusting the agency's dashboard and the agency's reporting, of which they may not even understand. They don't understand. They don't know what the right benchmarks are, and so they wait. And they may like them. They may be kind of not happy, not sad, but kind of indifferent. And then they hear a good sales pitch. Someone comes in, a good salesperson comes in and makes a really great paid search pitch or Facebook pitch, and the dealer goes, "That sounds like a better thing than what we're doing. We got to get on that. That sounds better." And it's just because I think because they don't have a good measurement, they really don't know if their current provider is doing well. I like to use the example. If you take any good dealer operator and you say, "Hey, how was used cars last month?" or "Did you make money in service?" They know exactly where to find that number. They can open their P&L and read it, like a music book, and just get that answer right away.
Yeah.
If you ask those same dealers, if you say which of your digital marketing vendors gives you the highest return on investment or the lowest cost per lead, they kind of say, well, we've always liked Dealer.com and done well with them, and Cars.com's always done well in our market. And we just, they don't have numbers.
Right.
They
can't back it with numbers. It's more of a feeling. It's an answer based on emotion of their relationship, not necessarily one backed by the numbers. Like you throw out numbers. This is what this costs. This is what that costs. This is typically what this costs. That's all over the map, depending on what the overall goal was or what the actual action taken was. But when it comes to the agencies, it sounds like that's not the typical conversation, which is why, if somebody comes in with that shiny new penny, they haven't seen that kind of shine before, so they may be more inclined to take that leap, even if it's a leap of faith.
Correct. Yep. And it's, we dealers hire us to help them measure success with their agencies, and so we'll get a new customer and we'll start in there, and they'll tell us, they're like, I don't trust these guys. I don't think this stuff's working, and it's working great. Like, we show the dealer, we're like, well, you may or may not like them, but the metrics say they're doing a great job, and let's tweak these things to see if we can improve them. But it's not as if every vendor gets kicked to the curb. I mean, if their results are great, we're agnostic. It doesn't matter to us as long as the ROI is there.
Well, that sounds like a great service, because at the end of the day, all they really care about is what's working. It's nothing personal. It's strictly business.
That's right.
All right. Kevin Lopez says VLAs are great. Every dealer should have VLAs. I used to push them on all my dealers during the initial rollout with Google. Definitely a good bang for your buck.
Right on.
Steve Apicella, being properly configured, aware of traffic patterns, and making actionable tasks based on those results is an expectation, or should be. Is it your opinion that most, if not all, dealers should train an internal expert to work with their vendors so it's not a once a month review? Well, that would be ideal, no?
That would be ideal, yes. And at the very least, even if it's not an expert, I think every dealership and every GM or every internet department needs someone who's very task oriented, who can knock out projects like if they identify there's some problem with their Google business profile, or they need to create an additional one for service, and they need to optimize that. Who's going to do that legwork? Who's going to do that work? And just get some basic training. They may not know analytics inside and out, but they know how to kind of do edits on the Google business profile. They know the right questions to ask the vendor, and they're kind of coordinating that. We do find when we have customers that really don't have that point person who can take on those tasks, those tasks just kind of fall to the wayside.
And the great thing to understand about your Google page is that it's a living organism. Okay, it lives, it breathes. And the more relevant content that is updated, the better off everybody is. Because if Google sees that you're an active listing, that you've got things going on, it's going to reward you. and it's
Correct.
going to give you broader reach so that you attract more people. I mean, it's probably one of the most incredible free tools available in the market today. I can't think of a better tool for any business, because I don't care what you sell. We have, one of our businesses, we have dealervendormatch.com, where we match vendors and dealers together. That's a great business. We also have a yarn business. And the funny thing is, now our dealer vendor match is a national business. So we have clients, dealer clients, and vendor clients all over the country. Our yarn business is both local and worldwide, global. And it's amazing how many times somebody will buy product from us and we ask them, how did you find us? And they'll do a search for knitting classes near me.
Nice.
Or knitting instruction, or some relevant search that we come up for. We don't even have a brick and mortar. We are strictly an online store. We have a film studio that we constructed downstairs in our home. It looks like a full-fledged yarn shop, but guess what? There's no sign outside where people can knock on the door and come on in. We merely broadcast weekly shows and other live events, and we export globally. Europe, New Zealand, Australia, UK, you name it, we ship there, all off of people finding us on Google through terms. So we use it and it works. And there's a lot of dealers that use it, and for them it works. But I would say there's so much more opportunity than people are realizing that, the stuff that you're sharing, George, I mean, it's wonderful.
That's good. That's good. And you reminded me, you mentioned content. One of the most common questions I get is, George, we had a sales Google business profile. We started a service one, but I can't get it to pull up. It's almost like it's ghosted. And I never find it when I try and search. And so the problem with that is it's brand new, right? And Google really won't really recognize it or have it show up in search results until it has two things, right? So it needs 20 reviews, that needs 20 owner photos. Now there's two kinds of photos. There's photos that customers can upload, and there's photos that the owner uploads to the back end of the Google business profile. It's the owner's photos that are a big signal to Google. So we see it take off as soon as the dealer gets 20 reviews and 20 owner photos. Their searches, views, and actions from their Google business profile will really start to ramp up. Trust me, it works. I've published it on LinkedIn and shown examples. Now, for the power users, if you can get your owner photos up over 100, Search Engine Land did a study in 2020 that said when owner photos of Google business profiles get over 100 owner photos, they get more than their fair share of searches, views, and actions. Now, we've had a number of dealers that do that. We don't see it exponential, but we do see good, strong growth continue. We have dealers with over 200. And again, when you're uploading this content to your Google business profile, don't expect that someone's going to look at 200 owner photos on a sales listing. We're sending signals to Google to say we're paying attention. We've got lots of content. We're very relevant. And that's what they're looking for.
And they reward you for that.
They do.
AJ Fulham, the number one thing you can do as a dealer is to outline what success looks like prior to hiring an agency. Measure against those agreed upon expectations. Too often we use our gut instead of the data. One can say that about tooling as well. There's a reluctance to using a new tool because oftentimes we feel threatened that the tool is going to take our job, and we rely on our gut, but we only know what we know. Whereas leveraging the technology, not only do you know what you know, but you know what you don't know, because it's looking at the data across the spectrum from everybody. You could capture opportunities that you never knew existed only because you don't have experience with them, but the rest of the market does. That's one of the many things I love about technology. And AJ Fulham also says the reality is every dealership or dealer group needs to have a dedicated resource or team especially versed in this area. The amount of activity that runs through a department in digital is staggering. Yeah, no joke. I don't know who came up with this 24 hours in a day thing, because clearly they've not looked at most automotive people's schedules, because I'm sure you do, and I need about 36 hours in mine. 24 just doesn't cover it for me.
Yeah, many times I'd like to freeze time, get caught up.
Yeah.
But AJ's right. I mean, strategy is important, right? And dealers should be asking themselves today, how is my strategy different than it was 2 years ago? Well, we don't have any new cars, right? We have a scarcity of new cars. So be careful if you're spending a lot of money on paid search for new car campaigns. You ask yourself strategically, why am I doing this if I'm selling what I've got, right? So start with a strategy for sure.
I think that, dealers have always paid attention to what they're paying for things. And I think what the last couple of years has done with this artificial economy, where they can't sell the equipment fast enough, I think what that's led to is dealers putting the brakes on a lot of products and a lot of technologies that they've been paying for to attract or manage the process. Because quite frankly, if I've got 500 people that want cars and I have 200 cars, I might not feel the need to have to pay somebody to help me find those other, those additional 300 people, because I can barely manage with what I have.
It's a great point, and dealers should also really think through that entire thing, right? I mean, there are a lot of buyers on the sidelines, right? There's a lot of buyers who have gone after those 800 buyers going after 500 cars. When we measure, third-party classifieds for just under 200 dealers, so it's not a massive sample set, but it's national. VDPs have been up the last 2 months, November and December. VDPs for most dealers were up while conversions were flat or down. And when we look at the percentage of new sessions from third parties, for a lot of dealers, we see that percentage of new sessions on referral traffic continuing to go down the last 3 or 4 months. I think third parties are sending the same shoppers back to stores. The message is there's no better time for retargeting campaigns, remarketing campaigns, and there's no better time for good email drip campaigns to unsold prospects. Understand that a lot of people in your CRM may be marked sold, they may not be, and there's a lot of shoppers that are continuing to return and look at cars, just maybe not finding what they want. And have a good process, right? Brian Pash had an article last week or the week before saying, is your website set up for scarcity? Test that, right? Try to find new cars that aren't on your website and see if there's a good, graceful process for making sure the consumer is on some kind of reminder list, or that you're going to reach out to that person when you do have inventory.
Rachel Swanson says, George Nenni, when you consult with a dealer regarding their GA, do you have benchmarks you're looking for when measuring success with outside vendor products such as SEM, social, email campaigns, etc.?
Yes. Yep. Those are the ones we ran through, like the 40 cents of VDP and $40 conversion for Facebook and paid search. Yep.
Now, before we close, because an hour happens real fast, it seems like a long time, but it's really not enough time. But I want to get into Gmb Spy. This is your baby that now you're approaching 13,000 users a week. I mean, George, I tip my hat to you, man. That's a huge accomplishment. Share with us a little bit about Gmb Spy and how people can get it and what it's going to mean for them.
Sure. We mentioned before that categories in Google business profiles are super important, and they are, right? And when you're building a new profile, or maybe you're getting outranked by a competitor, one of the first questions dealers should ask themselves is, do I have a category setting problem? Maybe my categories aren't set up properly and my competitor's winning because they've got the right categories, especially around fixed ops. And so the Gmb Spy, the first version, its goal was be able to go out and find any competitor, find any Google listing, and it would sniff and tell you or spy on the category, so you could know that, right? And that was great. That saved agencies and SEOs a lot of time, because they were having to go into the HTML. It was hidden in the HTML, and they could find it, but it was really cumbersome. So that's why we wrote the app, was to just sniff the HTML and then post the categories up there. Version 2.0 that just came out a few weeks ago, it goes one step further. It now looks at the search query. So if I look for brake repair, Memphis, Tennessee, Gmb Spy will take all the top 20 and the top 3 listings and show you the categories for those. So, and you can dump those into Excel, and it's really easy to be able to look at it and say, oh, okay, it's really clear here. We got to have auto repair. We have to have, you know, these different categories because the winners all seem to have those in common. And that's what it does.
And how does somebody find your tool?
Sure. Yeah, if you just Google Gmb Spy, it'll be the first choice, and that will take you to the Chrome store where you download it. It's a free tool, and it works really quickly, and you know, has great value. By the way, I remember for Rachel's question before on the benchmarks, those are also on our resources page. It's in an infographic, so you can download the infographic. We've got a benchmark infographic that has those all laid out.
George, this has been an exciting show, man. What I love about this is that people like you come on the show and you bring and share not only relevant information, but relevant tools. I mean, you're offering free tools that will benefit every single business that uses it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We're glad to do it. I love what I do. Love the car business. All the people I work with, my colleagues. So having a great time.
I say all the time, some of my best friends today I met on both sides of the desk. I love our business. I'm entering into my 42nd year in it.
That's awesome.
I can't imagine being in any other, I mean, I'm in other businesses as well, but I can't imagine not being part of the car business, man. Having friends like you and all the others that I've made over the many years, there's no reason for me to ever get out. So George, thank you so much. Thank you to the audience for participating and tuning in and supporting the show every week. I hope that you find value in what we bring to the table every week. It's free. As my good friend Paul Machine said, a rising tide lifts all boats. And the better we all get, the greater perception our business has to all of the people. To quote somebody in a movie, we're bigger than US Steel. And we are. There's no business like the car business. So thank you. I wish you all a safe and successful week. And we'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live. Have a great rest of your night. See you next week.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, George.